Next meeting. We will now have our prayers. Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness has appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trusts in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Item number 2, the confirmation of the minutes of the 29th of September. Senator Michelle Simmons, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, everyone. Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, the 29th of September, 2021 be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of Wednesday, the 29th of September, 2021 be confirmed.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Senator Michelle Simmons.
You're welcome.
Item number 3, messages.
No messages, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Sumner. Item number 4, reports of committee. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. There are none. Item number 6, notices of motion. There are none. Item number 7, petitions. There are none. Item number 8, we have 2 statements. The first being in the name of Senator Curtis Richardson, the Junior Minister of National Security. Senator Richardson, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning, Madam President. This is
Good morning.
On behalf of Senator Richardson, I just want to invite him to the Senate and reading his statement. Mr. Richardson is actually en route.
Yes, certainly, Senator. Dr. Ernest G.V. Peets, the government leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, for your cooperation and indulgence. Madam President, I rise this morning to inform this Honorable House that during the week of the 30th of August, 2021, a number of Bermuda agencies received training in disaster victim identification, also known as DVI. Madam President, as a direct result of the air crash incident training conducted in January of 2019, a gap was realized that Bermuda and all other overseas territories have in disaster victim identification. To assist, the National Disaster Coordinator approached the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office with an application for this DVI training to be delivered across all the OTs. Madam President, the DVI process is an internationally recognized sequence of activities that has been developed over several years. It has been tested in large-scale disasters in many regions across the world and has proven to be a reliable method by which victim data in the form of post-mortem material can be matched against missing person data. The aim of this matching process is to positively identify human remains. Madam President, Bermuda was lucky to receive 2 instructors, Mr. Howard Way, OBE, and Police Superintendent Pete Sparks, QPM, from the Disaster Victim Identification Team, which is part of the National Police Coordination Center and sits under the National Police Chiefs Council. Madam President, they trained 15 students, 12 officers, and 3 regiment soldiers who received 3 full days of training on the ground with these practitioners in managing any victims, scene preservation, and evidence. Madam President, on Friday the 3rd, 4 hours of training was delivered to the various commanders of the agencies that would be involved and staff with specialist roles that were touch points for the scene investigators. These included the Deputy Governor, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of National Security, police commanders, regiment commanders, Coast Guard commander, fire commanders, Bermuda Hospital Board, Mass Casualty Team commander, Interpol officer, family liaison officer, property management team, police training center, police doctor, chief dental officer, pathologist, morgue manager, coroner's office, crown counsel, diplomatic counsels, safety and health managers, public information officers, Bermuda Red Cross, Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority, Bermuda Airport Authority, and Skyport Corporation. The coordination of the training was completed by the Disaster Risk Reduction and Mitigation Team, which sits under the Ministry of National Security and the Emergency Measures Organization. Madam President, over the last 40 years, there has unfortunately been many incidents around the world that has involved the loss of life on large scale. These have included air crashes, industrial explosions, fires, acts of terrorism, as well as other incidents, including natural disasters such as hurricanes and tsunamis. Fortunately, these incidents are rare, but this doesn't mean that we should not be prepared. After each of these incidents, an inquiry will take place, which has resulted in many recommendations being made. Madam President, these inquiries have shaped disaster victim identification into a discipline which follows the recommendations made and includes the provision to be honest and, as far as possible, provide accurate information at all times and at every stage to the families and friends of the victims, to be respectful to the deceased and the bereaved, have sympathetic and a caring approach, act professionally and diligently to avoid mistaken identification. Madam President, Interpol has mandated that one of the most important requirements for victim identification is the application of international standards, which aims to promote a consistent and widely understood approach, especially in multinational DVI operations. Madam President, I would like to thank both Howard Way, Pete Sparks, for providing their expert advice based on many years of experience, and also to the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office for sponsoring this training. Madam President, the Disaster Risk Reduction and the Mitigation Team are now crafting a DVI response plan, which will outline Bermuda's coordinated multi-agency response should an incident ever occur that requires a DVI response in Bermuda. Madam President, the work of the DRRM team, sometimes known as DERM, is important to ensuring that Bermuda is prepared for any large-scale disaster. I will continue to update this Honorable House on this work and the important work of all the departments and units within the Ministry of National Security. Thank you very much, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister Pete. The second statement is in the name of Senator Owen K. Darrell, the Junior Minister for the Cabinet Office, and that has to do with Bermuda Post Office Enhanced Services. Senator Darrell, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President.
Good morning.
Madam President, I would like to speak briefly to inform this chamber of some Bermuda Post Office or BPO initiatives that are being implemented. As has been mentioned, the BPO continues to advance products and services that will benefit local businesses and residents. Madam President, the BPO continues to innovate through this current COVID-19 pandemic to not only service the community by delivering mail, but to also provide business solutions for the betterment of Bermuda in general. Madam President, one such service is called Drop and Deliver, which allows local businesses the opportunity to use the BPO to deliver local products to their clients based within Bermuda. Madam President, this value-added service will allow local e-commerce as well as the traditional brick-and-mortar vendors that do not have a delivery network the option of dropping off mail items and packages to the Bermuda Post Office for delivery locally within 24 hours. As an added bonus, they can arrange for the post office to also pick up from their place of business for free. Local business rates will apply with a $5 fee per delivery item. Madam President, local entrepreneurs, e-tailers, and businesses will be provided with an affordable, local, last-mile delivery and logistics service. Madam President, as an added feature to expand markets for our small business owners that want to ship goods and merchandise overseas, the BPO will also pick up mail items for free and ship internationally upon arrangement. Customers will find that the BPO postage rates for this service are highly competitive, and once we go live, can be found on www.bermudapost.bm. BPO rates are consistently at least 50% of what couriers normally charge for this service. Madam President, for businesses and residents, another service that the BPO is offering in the near future is the introduction of a one-size, one-price mailbox for outgoing international parcel mail. This allows customers to benefit from the overseas delivery service by having a flat rate for anything that can fit into a particular size box, irrespective of weight or content. The premise is, if it fits, it ships. Madam President, the concept is that customers can put whatever fits into a mailbox, pay a flat postage rate, and the post office will transport that item. Customers can track and trace their item from Bermuda to the intended delivery address anywhere in the world. Madam President, another service that we are introducing is where business customers in Hamilton who want their P.O. box mail to be delivered to them can have this done for them as well. There will be a small fee for this service if customers wish to utilize it. Madam President, I make mention of the Bermuda Post Office as they intend to tell their story. Their story includes the fact that 98% of all letter mail arriving into Bermuda is delivered within 4 working days. All parcels and packet mail received is cleared through customs within 3 hours, and all mail items are delivered to a sub-post office within 2 working days for customer pickup. Madam President, in the future, the BPO customers will receive an electronic advice of arrival of their parcel mail items. Customers will be able to pay customs duty online, and their mail item will be delivered to them if they so wish. Madam President, as announced by Minister Frederick recently in the House, another place, the Bermuda Post Office is also expanding its services to include enhanced shipping options for online shopping. This new service is called My Bermuda Post and will be powered by My US. The Post Office is now in the midst of a soft launch to test the service, and it will be fully implemented for us in mid-October. Madam President, the Post Office has for years been offering a parcel service for overseas goods, and this new partnership will provide enhanced experience and improved level of service for customers. Madam President, these are but a few innovative and progressive initiatives that we are implementing at the Bermuda Post Office, and we are certain that the general public and local business will be delighted with these new services. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Owen Darrell, Junior Minister for the Cabinet Office. Item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, the first reading of public bills. There are none. Item 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question and question periods. Senators, we will now consider the questions to the 2 statements that have been read to you this morning. The first one being the disaster victim identification training that was delivered by Minister.
I have a question, Madam President.
Senator Michelle Simmons, you have a question. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm very happy to hear about the disaster victim identification training. And I noted in the brief which Minister Peets delivered on behalf of Senator Richardson, that these incidents, thankfully, where the identification of victims requires a special touch, they're very rare. Therefore, the training which was delivered recently will probably not be something that is used right away or indeed even frequently. If the training is not used right away, it's probably going to lapse. So my question is, how will the skills acquired be maintained? I think that's very important. There should be a plan for maintaining those skills so that if, God forbid, those skills are needed in the event of some kind of major disaster, those persons who've received the training will be able to step right up and get on with the job. So that's my question. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Michelle Simmons. Minister Peets, you have a response?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Senator, for your question. Training like this, of course, is vitally important given the nature of the work. And as the statement indicated, these types of training are indeed professional and do come under the certification of important oversight bodies. The recertification process is typically every year or every 2 years. The substantive junior ministers, present at the moment, like to provide more clarity on the recertification process before we conclude our session today, if that is suitable.
Thank you, Minister Peets. Senator Simmons, do you have a second question?
No, I will just await some more information. I'm glad to hear there will be recertification because that will be so important.
Absolutely. Would any other senator care to ask a question on this statement? Senator Robin Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And also I thank
Madam President, I cannot hear the senator.
Senator Tucker, we're having a problem hearing you.
Madam President, can you hear me now?
It's still very faint.
How's this, Madam President?
Senator Darrow, can you hear?
If you just scream a little louder, Senator, we'll be able to hear you. Thank you.
Okay, is this a little better? Is this better?
Go ahead. I'll do my best. Go ahead.
Okay.
You can proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to know from Minister Peets what was in place prior to this particular training. So if we were to have had a disaster, how would that have been handled? And also, I would like to know how. Oh, sorry, I need to wait for you to invite me to the next question. I apologize.
Senator Richardson, Minister Peets, are you going to respond to that question?
Sure, I'll certainly make an attempt, Madam President. As the statement had indicated, in 2019, in January, there was a air crash incident training conducted. That particular training identified some gaps in services, which of course we eventually filled in gaps in services with DPI training. So I guess the short answer to the question is that prior to us receiving the DPI training, the training that was in place was the air crash incident training, which now has been supplemented with the DPI training.
Thank you, Minister Peets. Senator Tucker, do you have a supplemental question?
I don't have a supplemental question, Madam President, but I do have a second question.
Proceed with your second question.
Thank you, Madam President. My second question is, I would just like to know how, what the criteria was for selecting the participants in the training, or for the training, rather. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
The overseas office, of course, provides some guidance. As we have mentioned in the statement, the identification of a lot of cross ministry departments were important. So agencies that are associated with disaster, either directly or indirectly. I don't have a complete number, but the list is quite extensive across the ministries. So these types of trainings have been done throughout overseas territories, as we've mentioned. I would imagine the number of individuals that were trained here are typical across other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Minister Peets. Senator Tucker, do you have a supplemental?
No, I don't, Madam President. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Ben Smith, opposition leader, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
As this training came about because there were deficiencies that were identified, can the minister let us know whether there were any other areas of deficiency that were identified at the time that potentially will need to see training happen or things change locally in order to cover up those deficiencies?
Madam President, it's my understanding that the deficiencies that were identified after the training in 2019 were fully covered by the DPI training. Perhaps maybe the question is asking, are there any additional ones beyond that?
Yes, correct. Is there anything else that is having to be added in order to deal with deficiencies that would have been identified in 2019?
Okay, thank you. Now that I've understand the question, Madam President, allow me some time to actually get a definitive answer for the senator.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ben Smith, do you have a second question or?
No, Madam President, thank you.
Would any other senator care to ask a question on this statement? Hearing none, we will move on to the second statement that was delivered this morning, and that was on the Bermuda Post Office Enhanced Service that was delivered by Senator Owen Darrell. Would any senator, Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just ask the minister whether, in the spirit of Buy Bermuda and supporting local businesses and Bermudian employment, whether any consideration had been considered in allowing local businesses to tender rather than directly contracting with the local or the overseas partner that we have heard about. So that's my question, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White. Senator Darrow, did you hear the question?
Just one more piece. The question is, was consideration given?
Would you repeat the question, Senator White?
So, thank you, Madam President. So in the spirit of Buy Bermuda and supporting local businesses and local employment, from reading the Daily, I understood that the local post office partnered with an overseas company as part of the solution. So my question is, why weren't local vendors, local businesses considered in this request for proposal process? Thank you, Madam President.
All right, first of all, Madam, thank you for the question, Senator. I'd like to first start off by pointing out that the Bermuda Post Office is considered and would be considered a local business. And I think that this, my Bermuda Post initiative will actually assist small local businesses in getting their products to Bermuda. Because right now we're seeing that there are enormous prices for private companies that are bringing in products from the States. So this is actually to assist Bermudians in bringing down cost and assist smaller local businesses.
Senator White, do you have a supplemental?
I do, Madam President. So I guess my follow-up question is, did this go was this a request for proposal to multiple vendors?
Madam President, the answer to that is no. This is an initiative and a new service offered by the Bermuda Post Office to assist local vendors and local Bermudians in bringing in goods at a cheaper price.
Thank you, Senator Darrow. Senator White, you have a second question?
I don't, Madam President. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Would any other senator care to ask a question on this, on the post office enhanced service? Senator,
Madam President.
yes, Senator Ben Smith, opposition leader, you have the floor.
Madam President, the junior minister just referred to the fact that it was going to help some local businesses, but also locals to bring the cost down. My question is regarding the fact that importing goods as an individual puts you in direct competition with local retail, and local retail hires Bermudians only. So the fact that what you're doing is trying to figure out a way to give an advantage to people bringing in their own goods could have a knock-on effect to local retail, which then will impact local jobs. So, Madam President, was that taken into consideration when we went down this path that the junior minister is referring to?
Senator Darrow, did you hear the question?
I will answer the question as such. Many things were taken into consideration when the Bermuda Post Office looked to modernize its service.
Okay, so Madam President, I guess my follow-up to that is that the prices that were referred to in the statement, you know, it's 50% lower than the competitors in Bermuda, and you know, we have a $5 fee. All of these things are to compete with the local market. My question is, the revenue that is created by the services that are going to be provided, are all costs actually being covered in order to give these services? Because in order to compete 50% lower in Bermuda's market, it would be interesting to know whether all costs are being covered in order for this to happen. Because if you're taking the advantage of making the cost lower by not covering all of the costs, you are impacting, once again, local businesses that hire Bermudians.
What was your second question, Senator Darrow? You have a
Madam
response.
President,
with respect, I didn't really hear a question.
Senator Ben Smith, would you repeat the question? Please, this is your second question.
Madam President, the question is, with the services that are being provided at the costs that the junior minister laid out, 50% less than our competitors, will the post office be actually covering their costs to provide those services?
The answer is yes, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Darrow. Do you have a supplemental to that question, Senator Ben Smith?
I do not, Madam President.
Senator Marcus Jones, you have a question for the junior minister on this statement? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I was listening with great intent the presentation made by Senator Darrow, and I guess I'm going to ask this question in a different way than what Senator Ben Smith asked it. Does the post office have a forecasted time frame in which this new entity within the Bermuda Post Office will actually be able to generate enough revenue for this division of the government to actually record a profit? Is that the long-term goal and objective of this new initiative, Junior Minister?
Madam President, as I said in the statement, that right now this service is in a soft launch phase. And once the service is actually fully implemented, we'd be able to look back and answer those questions. But I also like to just point out, Madam President, the opposition seemed to be focused on a lot of these overseas services, but I've, in my statement, given multiple initiatives that have been put in place by the Bermuda Post Office to help local businesses and the local community. And I think the opposition should probably focus on some of those services that I've talked about this morning as well.
Senator Jones, you have a supplemental or second question?
I have a supplemental, Madam President. I would like for the junior minister to indulge us for a government department that has consistently lost money in its operations. Surely the junior minister would understand why we, as an opposition, and in fact the greater community, would want to see a business plan, at least a path to profitability, to give the country comfort that we're not throwing good money after bad. That's why we're asking the question, because the public needs to understand and know that this new initiative is going to bear good fruit. So can the junior minister give us some comfort, some indication that that in fact is at least the objective, and that there's a path to get there?
Senator Jones. Senator Darrell?
The question that the senator is asking speaks directly to the point of this statement. I mean, he started, and everyone knows that the Bermuda Post Office has been losing revenue for years. And these initiatives that we put in place have been put in place to try to make revenue for the Bermuda Post Office. So you've actually answered the point of why we made this statement. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Darrell. Senator Jones, do you have a second question?
No, Madam President. I believe I'm going to state that. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Would any other senator care to ask a question on this statement? Hearing none, then. Thank you, senators. We'll move on then with our order of business. Item number 11 is the first reading of private bills. There are none. Beg your pardon. We now move on to item number 13, which is the orders of the day. I beg your pardon. The first order of the day is the second reading of the Health Insurance Amendment Act 2021, and that is in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister for Health. Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Health Insurance Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Health Insurance Amendment Act 2021 introduces amendments to the standard premium rate and enhanced benefits under the health insurance plan and future care and a maternal benefit for our vulnerable women. The Health Insurance Act 1970 contains the foundation of our current national health insurance system, and in conjunction with the associated regulations, the minimum mandated health insurance package is prescribed. The mandated package consists mainly of the standard health benefit and mutual reinsurance fund. Both components form the fundamental base of an insurance package that all employers must provide and all insurers must include in any policy. The premium for the mandated package is called the standard premium rate, or SPR. It is comprised of a standard health benefit component and a mutual reinsurance fund component. Madam President, the SHB component covers select diagnostic imaging out of hospital, for example, mammograms, select medical home care benefits like IV infusions, and select services that support home care. The MRF is a prescribed amount which each insurer pays into the pooled fund. It covers most local hospital-based care, inpatient and outpatient services, all insured persons' kidney care, including transplants, anti-rejection drugs, transplant coordination and education. And in addition, the MRF may provide funding for programs that support health for those vulnerable individuals that are uninsured and underinsured. Madam President, the SHB and MRF, collectively the SPR, are generally reviewed and calculated on prior claims experience, the insured population headcount, anticipated utilization and fee increases, and any changes in benefits. Madam President, it would be remiss of me not to further explain how critical the role of the SPR is to the sustainability of our health system. In July 2019, BHP's fee-for-service model was abolished and remodeled to a fixed budget model. The new model will provide for $322 million to be transferred to the BHP by way of government grabs and subsidies, plus a transfer from the MRF portion of the SPR. Additionally, other elements critical to the health system, such as the Bermuda Health Council, full treatment for patients with kidney disease, the personal home care program, the Chronic Disease Innovation Fund, and the Enhanced Care Program are all funded by way of the MRF portion of the SPR. Furthermore, funds are allocated within the SPR to subsidize HIP and future care and to support the Health Insurance Department's administrative functions. Madam President, all the aforementioned components of the health system supported by the SPR are of critical significance to the people of Bermuda. However, it is no secret that BHB, a main pillar in the community, has been impacted in a major way by the events in the last 21 months. The pandemic has brought substantial pressure to bear on BHB, creating unanticipated expenses such as PPE and infection control costs, while realizing a revenue reduction due to a reduction to the insured headcount and the recent decrease in visitors to the island. It must be noted, BHB has endeavored to take robust cost-saving measures to mitigate the downward pressures of the health system, inclusive of increasing utilization and the current pandemic. They delivered $30 million in savings over the past 2 years while maintaining access to health care and without compromising the quality of care. Despite improved financial performance, BHB's cash position continued to be pressured and was reduced to $45 million at the end of 2019-2020. Bermuda, like the rest of the world, finds itself in an unprecedented position in the fight against COVID-19. BHB, as the healthcare provider of first and last resort, has played a key role in this battle and will continue with any subsequent outbreak. Unfortunately, and despite the success and delivery of savings in each of the last 3 fiscal years, BHB's financial position is not secure. Its cash at hand, often referred to as a reserve, has proved to be vital in securing supplies for the entire country in this time of national emergency. Madam President, the increase in the SPR does not fully provide BHB with sufficient funding to sustain their operations. A rigorous review of all options available to support BHB was undertaken to ensure the SPR and ultimately the insurer would not endure the entire funding requirements on its shoulders. A portion of the BHB funding will be subsidized by the collection of the travel authorization fees. Government will allocate $11.1 million of travel authorization fees to BHB. This allocation removes approximately $23 per month of the cost of the SPR. This equates to savings of $276 per year for the insured. Madam President, though the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the many strengths of the health system, it has also derailed the SPR. Bermuda, like the rest of the world, saw and continues to see this 100-year pandemic cause unspeakable damage to the community in various forms. The increase of the unemployed and ultimately an increase in the uninsured has devastated many countries, Bermuda included. Madam President, the SPR is an employment-based health insurance scheme. Therefore, the less that are employed, the less the SPR collects, and the less funding there is to support the health system, which includes the organizations, programs, and insurance funds I just mentioned. The SPR was calculated on a reported 49,027 insured adults over the past 2 years. The reduced headcount of 46,300 is the estimate used for calculation purposes as of December 2020, but as recently as May 2021, it is reported to be 46,181. Madam President, in addition to unemployment and emigration, there are companies and persons unable to afford higher priced insurance products and therefore both HIP and Future Care have experienced increases in policy purchases, which creates an increase in utilization. This transfer to alternative policies has no impact on the headcount, but is an indicator that the pandemic has forced entities and individuals to economize. Future Care continues to see the pressures of the aging population, which will impact utilization and cost. Madam President, the MRF component of the SPR, an annual government capital injections, provides a subsidized amount to HIP and Future Care client premiums to continue to ensure the premiums can remain well below the market rate. 28% of the HIP premium and 47% of the Future Care premiums are subsidized. In real terms, the HIP premium is currently $429.24. However, $166.07 per client per month is subsidized, and the Future Care premium is currently $500.14 and $435.17 per client per month is subsidized. Without these subsidies, the real cost of the premium for HIP would be $595.31, and the real cost of the premium for Future Care would be $935.31, respectively. Additionally, the downscaling and migration of businesses and residents to HIP and Future Care increases utilization, administration, and ultimately costs to HIP, Future Care, and the SPR. It has been 6 years since 2015 since HIP and Future Care have endured an increase to the premiums during a period other expenses increased. Madam President, while utilization increases, the needs of the population also increase. Therefore, a review of the benefits needed are regularly assessed. Madam President, evidence supports pharmaceutical intervention as an important part of prevention of disease progression, which is a direct link to cost savings. Both Future Care and HIP clients will receive increase in new pharmaceutical benefits, respectively. The Future Care annual $2,000 prescription drug cap will increase, and HIP will receive a newly allocated prescription drugs benefit per annum. The new and enhanced benefit to HIP is ideal for those entities struggling due to the pandemic and ultimately transferred their insurance policies to HIP can now be assured of having a prescription benefit for their employees. I wish to remind members of the public that part of the 2017 PLP election platform indicated that we as a government will increase the prescription drug benefit for seniors in Future Care. Both HIP and Future Care prescription drug benefit is 100% coverage for the annual amount, unlike various other policies that cover a portion or percentage of prescriptions. Just as importantly, we all know the uninsured and underinsured mothers-to-be are underserved during a critical part of life development. I cannot understate the need for every child to be given the best possible start to achieve a fruitful life. A mother-to-be's inability to have access to basic maternity care and maternal health education severely reduces an unborn child's chances of ultimately becoming a productive citizen and enjoying some of life's rewards. Approximately 100 out of 500 babies every year are born to women without health insurance. Lack of health insurance is a barrier to access necessary care, especially when pregnant. For too many of these women, the first time they meet with the OBGYN is in the hospital when they are ready to deliver. Low birth weight, mental health events, and death are higher in mothers and children who do not get the standards of care for pre- and postnatal care from these doctors and their teams. Every dollar spent on perinatal care saves $1.60 to $5.19 in hospitalization costs for mothers and babies. This is a return of at least 160% for each dollar invested in our families. Research shows that a lack of prenatal care is associated with a 40% increase in the risk of neonatal death overall, and a doubling of the risk among women delivering at or after 36 weeks gestation. Additional studies show an estimate the cost of lifetime custodial care of low birth weight babies to be as much as $1 million per child in 2021. These neonatal risks have been rising in Bermuda recently. To ensure all children have an equal and healthy start to life, all uninsured and underinsured women must have access to health care and education at this critical point in their life and the life of their unborn and newborn children. Madam President, I reiterate that Bermuda's current market realities are real and present. If we do nothing, we could see a collapsed health system in the near future. All of the aforementioned indicators which are impacted by the pandemic such as the reduced insured headcount, the migration of struggling companies and individuals to the HIP and Future Care programs, the increasing utilization, the benefit needs of the HIP, Future Care clients, and the under and uninsured women requiring maternity benefits, caused the ministry to propose amendments to the premiums of the SPR, HIP, and Future Care. Madam President, the proposed benefits are in line with public health core values, such as enhanced equitable access to critical services and care. Madam President, as is stated, the amendments are as follows. There will be a $45 increase in the standard premium rate, representing a 13.6% increase. This will account for a new reduced insured headcount to ensure the BHP revenue target is met. It will support continued treatment for kidney disease patients, and it will provide a new maternity care benefit for uninsured and underinsured women, which will secure more equitable access regardless of income, insurance, or social status. There will be a $30 increase in the HIP premium, representing a 6.9% increase, and this will be accompanied by the introduction of a new prescription drug benefit covering 100% of costs up to $1,000 in a policy year. There will also be a $30 increase in the Future Care premium, representing a 6% increase. This will be accompanied by an increase in the existing prescription drug benefit of $1,000, taking it from $2,000 to $3,000. Madam President, since January 2020, the health system has been tested by the pandemic, and its strengths and abilities have gleamed steadily throughout the last 21 months. However, as we are not an exception to the rest of the world, the challenges have also exposed areas requiring improvement. There has never been a greater need for healthcare, but because of this, there has also never been a greater pressure on our healthcare system than now. The government's commitment to accessible, affordable, high-quality healthcare as a basic human right has not wavered, and the pandemic ensures the government's continued emphasis on this exact philosophy. Madam President, it must be acknowledged that we are in a period of transition brought on by the unanticipated and unexpected costs of the pandemic. Madam President, integrated healthcare and universal health coverage remain priorities for the government, and the changes introduced now support the direction of travel for strengthening our health system. This work is ongoing, and as mentioned in this chamber, we fully anticipate that before the end of the year, we will be setting out the steps we have agreed with stakeholders from across the system to pick up the baton to reignite this journey afresh. Again, the pandemic has highlighted our strengths, but it has also exposed segments in the health system which we can use as opportunities to build on with our partners. Madam President, we must all commit to working collaboratively as one in a positive light to develop a health system that we can all be proud of, so that no one person or entity is left behind. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I think you're muted at the moment.
Thank you very much, Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister for Health. And before I open the floor, I would just like to acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Rosie Azar, who's the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs. She's in the Senate today. Would any senator care to speak on this Health Insurance Amendment Act? Senator Robin Tucker, you have the floor.
Madam President, and I thank the Junior Minister for her presenting this bill this morning. I don't think that anyone can deny that it's the country's responsibility to ensure that our babies and our unborn, our unborn babies and our uninsured mothers to be are covered. And of course, it's undoubtedly important to ensure that our seniors and persons that are otherwise insured on things like HIP insurance and our private insurance get the level of coverage and everything that's needed. So with that said, I would say that, the opposition has we support this particular bill. However, I do want to say that I do have a couple of challenges with the presentation of the bill. And that is certainly around the increasing costs for seniors. Again, I do believe that the mere fact that seniors again, just Googling increases for be impacted. While that is in this particular case being balanced to some degree by affording an additional $1,000 of prescription benefit, but again, these are our seniors who, in my opinion, we should be taking care of, not continually taking monies from them. So that is one issue that I do have with this particular bill. I also would like to know, Madam President, what data do we have to support the specific issues that were raised here, such as the issues with needing to have mothers have the additional education, maternal education, and access. And I am not by any means saying that I'm questioning it in terms of it being a need. I am just wondering, what are we anchoring these decisions to in terms of having tangible data? So, Madam President, I also would like to say that the topic of healthcare, as the junior minister did mention, goes along with not having sufficient people in the country. And I also think, Madam President, that while this bill does attempt to, but this bill does provide some benefits, but I also think that going forward, the conversation cannot be held in silos, that the thing that not having sufficient people in the country does go along with being able to provide the country with sufficient health care. So I hope that I haven't confused people much, but I would like to know what data specifically that we have been using to be able to arrive at the decisions that were made, highlighted in this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robin Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just going to piggyback off of what my colleague, Senator Tucker, was referring to, and that's the debt. Every time any decision that one makes, especially when it has to do with the finances of a country, and it has to do with the increase of taxes, because that's basic. This is an increase in tax. We must have the sufficient data to make these decisions. Now, I will bring to the attention of not only my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but to the public in general, that we still do not have the most recent audited financial statements from the Bermuda Hospital Board. I believe the last audited financials was 2018. I stand to be corrected, but I believe that is the last date, the last year that we had audited financial statements. And also, we're in the midst of a national crisis, this pandemic. We all can remember when at the beginning of this pandemic, back in March 2020, the government was inundated with expenses that were never budgeted for. We all understand that the government had to dig deep, had to increase its debt ceiling to be able to cover itself financially. Now, we've been in this pandemic now for, I guess it's 21 months. I would like to know if the government has at least an estimate, an approximate figure of those expenses that is directly connected to COVID, because we know that this was an abnormal, unusual cost that struck the government, and I'm sure that cost, that unbudgeted cost, was part of the decision making and part of the calculation to increase the premiums for those that are paying into the healthcare system. Also, I would like to know what are the predictions from the actuaries for the increases in premiums, not just for this year, several years. Surely the actuaries have models, have means of being able to predict how the premiums will be impacted negatively or positively in the coming years, not just for this year. We remember that when the Minister of Health was making overtones of sending the government or directing the country into the way of universal health care, the private health providers, healthcare insurance companies, they took note of that and they immediately started to raise their premiums in the anticipation of the government making those decisions. So as a responsible private sector within the health insurance business, they did what they could to get ahead of it, to preempt what the government was going to do. So many of our citizens had to experience a bump up in their premiums last year. Now here we are in year number 2, and we've now got more bad news of premiums going up. We know in successive front speeches, the government, the PLP government, made declarations that its intent and objective was to provide affordable health care for its citizens. We have not seen that. So if I can ask Madam President, the Junior Minister, number one, if she can give us some indication of the at least the preliminary numbers that relate to the cost of this pandemic in the realm of the hospital, where the cost to the hospital is going up, the importing of PPPs to be able to counteract this pandemic, because I believe that's going to be a major part and help give an explanation for this significant rise in premiums. And also, the second question was, have the actuaries been able to give us a forecast for possible increases in premiums for the next 2 to 3 years? That will help residents in this country, that will help businesses as well, be able to plan for the upcoming years, not just for this year alone. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Michelle Simmons, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm very grateful that the Junior Minister for Health has brought this Health Insurance Amendment Act before us today, and I thank her for the brief. One of the things that really caught my eye in this bill was the need to provide comprehensive maternity care and critical maternal health education for young women or for women. And I'm even more startled this morning by the proportion of women who are having children who have no health insurance. The figure given was 100 out of 500 women each year, so that's 20%. That should alarm everyone, because we know that when children and mothers get off to a rocky start, life is not smooth at all for them. And we need our children to be vibrant, to be able to grow into young people and adults who can contribute to this community. So I'm very, very pleased to have those benefits covered by the Health Insurance Act. But what did concern me was, and I did listen to the debate in the other place, there is no definition of those terms, comprehensive maternity care or critical maternal health education, in the bill. And indeed, I'm not sure where those matters are defined, but they should be defined somewhere. So there is no doubt about what comprehensive maternity care and critical maternal health education are. I believe people have offered verbal explanations, but I think they should be clearly defined, if not in this bill, then where? So that's a question I have. Where can we find accurate, up-to-date definitions for those terms? The other comments I would like to make are, I think in this pandemic and with all the additional expenses and costs, everyone was expecting to see increases in the SPR. And so none of this comes as a surprise. It was good also to see that prescription drug benefits have been introduced under HIP, that's the health insurance plan, and increased under future care. That will be very welcome for those persons who are members of these plans. Madam President, I don't want to just talk for the sake of talking. Those were the things that leapt out at me under this bill, and I am happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Michelle Simmons. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill?
Yes, Madam President.
Sorry, Senator Ben Smith, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question to the junior minister. I would believe that there was a lot of time and effort that went into making a decision to raise these fees, and probably a decision that would have been in the works for maybe years, because it's not something that you just start today to make this kind of decision. So my question is, would this number have been moving up regardless of a pandemic? Because we made a change in the hospital that was significant. It's my understanding that some services potentially were changed in the hospital in order for them to reduce costs for the new amount of money that they were getting in a grant, as opposed to the way the system was working before. So my question is, were we heading to this kind of increase anyway prior to the pandemic? Which then ties into the question that comes from my colleague, Senator Jones. If the pandemic number is hitting us right now, will we see a number that increases further a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And that's what's being predicted by the actuaries. Because the things are, what's happening today is one thing, but a lot of times the bill doesn't come home right away. It's something that you're going to see in the future. So is the increase that we're seeing right now what was based off the changes that happened prior to this? And then we are going to see a further increase because of what we're going through today. So that's my question. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith, opposition leader in the Senate. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister, you have a few questions to respond to.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to start by thanking the other senators for the support of this bill. To Senator Tucker's comment about the data, I can say that we have the data. We know how many children are born without insurance. We know that the parents are uninsured. And, the Health Council is actually the entity that receives this data. And the Health Council has also gone to the extra steps and have had the necessary conversations with the OBGYNs, and they are in full support of these amendments. We do see the benefits of providing this type of care before and after birth, and it's important to make sure that our young people have the best start. When we look at 20% of the population perhaps having a less than ideal start, I do think it is cause for concern. Sorry. I believe that it was Senator Jones who mentioned the increase in premiums, and was wondering what that looks like in the future. He also mentioned the COVID costs, I guess, that have been incurred in the different entities. And I can say that every involved ministry has their own COVID budget. I don't have those numbers at this time, but I can say that the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Finance, and the Cabinet, they have their budgets for COVID matters. Senator Michelle Simmons had some questions about what this maternal care would look like. And I can say that it involves pre and post-birth care, inclusive of doctor's appointments, monitoring both the mother and the child. This involves ultrasound and preventative care and acute care if required. And so we are trying to take a full approach. We also had questions from the senators about whether or not the rate was going to increase. And what I can say that is when you look at increased utilization, when we look at inflation, and when we look at the need for increased medical treatment, it's inevitable that the need is going to rise and that the costs associated are going to rise with it. And so while we don't like to see ourselves burdening anybody with any further costs, additional benefits do require additional finance. And so I do think that all of these amendments are a good first step, and I'm looking forward to what's to come.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. You can then move to the second reading.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Health Insurance Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. Carry on, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Health Insurance Amendment Act 2021 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Health Insurance Amendment Act 2021 do now pass. Is there an objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Hudson, and thank you, all senators. We now move on to the second order of the day, and that is the second reading of the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021, and that is also in your name, Senator Ariel Hudson, Junior Minister of Finance. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Amendments Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am pleased to present the bill entitled the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021. This bill will amend the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Act 2019, commonly referred to as the ISAC Act, to enable registration of an incorporated segregated account as a company at the time of initial registration under the ISAC Act, and to streamline the process for registration of a digital asset businesses as ISACs. The bill makes other changes in consequence of the substantive amendments to the ISAC Act. Madam President, the ISAC Act introduced ISACs as a new corporate structure in response to market demands for a product to compete with incorporated cell company structures offered in competitor jurisdictions. One of the most important features of the ISAC product is the ability to segregate assets and liabilities amongst an ISAC and its incorporated segregated accounts, also known as ISAs. Once an ISAC is registered under the Act, it can register and operate individual ISAs needed to diversify investors and lines of businesses and to mitigate risk. Each ISA is a legal person with the rights, powers, and privileges of a natural person that exist separately from those of the ISAC. Madam President, shortly after the ISAC Act became operational, it was noted that the Act did not provide for ISAs to be registered as companies governed by the Companies Act. Currently, for an ISA to be registered as a company, its prior registration under the ISAC Act must be cancelled. The ISAC Act will no longer apply, and the company will be governed solely by the Companies Act. The inability to register ISAs as companies has caused significant concerns amongst industry representatives about the potential for legal uncertainty in foreign courts, particularly within the reinsurance sector. Madam President, this bill will resolve industry concerns by clarifying the status of ISAs as companies at the time of initial registration. As such, it will no longer be necessary for an ISA to cancel its registration under the ISAC Act to become a company. Each ISA will be incorporated as a company governed by the Companies Act and registered as an ISA under the ISAC Act. Madam President, the ISAC Act is also amended to enable an ISA to continue operations as a company once the registration under the ISAC Act is cancelled. The now former ISA can continue operating as an independent company governed by the Companies Act. The assets, liabilities, rights, and obligations of the ISA will continue to be those of the independent company. This flexibility is essential to ensuring that the ISAC product remains as versatile as possible. Madam President, in addition to the changes regarding ISAs, the bill will amend the ISAC Act to enable digital asset businesses to register as ISACs without the need for approval by the Minister of Finance. Currently, only insurance businesses and investment funds may register as ISACs without first obtaining ministerial approval. As members of the Senate are aware, digital asset businesses like insurance businesses and investment funds are regulated financial institutions supervised by the Bermuda Monetary Authority. This amendment will streamline the process for registering a digital asset business as an ISAC. The change in process is supported by both the BMA and industry representatives and is consistent with existing government policy. Finally, Madam President, changes are proposed to the Companies Act 1981 and Government Fees Regulations 1976. These amendments are simply in consequence of the amendments to the ISAC Act regarding registration of ISAs as companies and continuation of a former ISA as a company governed under the Companies Act. Madam President, the bill we are debating today will enhance Bermuda's ISAC product and make it more competitive with similar offerings in other jurisdictions. I would like to thank the Technical Office in the Ministry of Finance, the Cabinet Office, the Economic Development Department, the Attorney General's Chambers, the Bermuda Monetary Authority, and members of the private sector who all worked on this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hudson, Junior Minister of Finance. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I'm a member of an advisory council to the Ministry of Finance as it relates to insurance and reinsurance, and this has been an item that's been discussed by the local market for a very long time now. So I know that the market will be extremely pleased to see that this has been brought forward to the House and to the Senate. So I'm very supportive of this. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator John White. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We, the opposition, we have no objections to this particular bill. We do support. We understand that this is simply a housekeeping and administrative amendment that's necessary, that's needed, and we throw in our support to this piece of legislation. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Would any other senator care to speak on the bill? Hearing none, then Senator Hudson, it's over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Incorporated Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson and all other senators. We'll move on to the third item on the orders of the day, and that is the second reading of the Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021, and that is also in your name, Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister for Finance. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the bill entitled Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 will make two substantive amendments to the Segregated Accounts Companies Act 2000. This bill will introduce new requirements concerning the appointment of segregated account representatives, and it will enable the use of segregated accounts company structure, commonly referred to as a SAC, by limited liability companies governed by the Limited Liability Companies Act 2016. The bill also includes changes in consequence of the substantive amendments, as well as various updates to modernize the Act. Madam President, Bermuda's segregated accounts product has evolved over time from use by companies authorized to operate segregated accounts primarily by private act to more wide-scale availability of the product for use by companies registered as SACs under the SAC Act. A SAC is a corporate structure which enables the legal segregation of assets and liabilities amongst different accounts operated by the SAC. While SACs are primarily used in conjunction with regulated business activities such as insurance business and investment management, there is no limitation as to the type of business activity for which a SAC can be used, so long as it is a legally permitted business activity. Likewise, a SAC can operate an unlimited number of segregated accounts to meet its business needs and objectives. The establishment of a segregated account does not create a separate legal person, which is distinct from the SAC. Each account is statutorily linked to the SAC. However, the assets held by a segregated account are held exclusively for the benefit of the owners of that account and persons who are counterparties to any transaction linked to that segregated account. The assets of a segregated account are legally firewalled from the assets and liabilities of the SAC and any other segregated account and are available to satisfy liabilities to the owners and creditors of only that segregated account. Madam President, the result of this framework is that a single SAC can diversify business lines, assets, creditors, and risks without having to register and operate separate companies to do so. Segregated account owners may also be different from the beneficial owners of the SAC. While this duality of ownership might seem contrary to the nature of a segregated account as not being a separate legal person from the SAC, it is an important and distinct feature that is directly related to the intended purpose and flexibility of the SAC product. Madam President, unfortunately, this aspect of the SAC structure has resulted in transparency concerns surrounding the account owners of segregated accounts. Since segregated accounts are not companies, limited liability companies, or partnerships, they are not subject to the standard process for registering a business. Segregated accounts are not subject to Bermuda's beneficial ownership framework, and the statutory definition of an account owner is not in any way linked to that of a beneficial owner. Following its review of the SAC structure, the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force recommended changes to the SAC framework in the January 2020 Mutual Evaluation Report for Bermuda. The recommended actions were intended to address the concerns regarding transparency of ownership of segregated accounts. Specifically, the CFATF recommended that SACs be required to utilize persons who are subject to regulation under Bermuda's anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing framework to serve as SAC representatives. The requirement to appoint a SAC representative and the duties of such persons is set out in Section 10 of the SAC Act. Currently, SAC representatives must be persons who are approved by the Minister of Finance. SAC representatives are required to make a written report to the Registrar of Companies of certain matters specified by the Act, including any failure of the SAC to comply with conditions or requirements imposed by the Registrar to ensure the reputation of Bermuda. Madam President, to address the concerns raised by the CFATF and in line with the recommended actions included in the 2020 report, this bill will introduce a requirement that SAC representatives be persons who are regulated under Bermuda's AML-ATF framework. The intention is to ensure that account owners are being properly vetted by the SACs for AML-ATF purposes. Since most SACs in the register are already subject to AML-ATF regulation, the appointment of a regulated SAC representative will be optional for regulated SACs, and those entities may choose to appoint as their SAC representative a regulated person or a person approved by the Minister of Finance. Madam President, to fully address the concerns regarding transparency, the Registrar of Companies will use the existing authorities set out in the SAC Act to impose a condition on SACs to identify and verify the identity of account owners. SAC representatives will remain subject to the requirement to make a written report to the Registrar of the SAC's failure to comply with this condition based on the current provisions of the Act. Madam President, the approach taken in this bill, combined with the exercise of existing legislative authority to mandate the vetting of account owners, strikes the right balance to enable effective implementation of the CFATF recommendation without imposing undue regulatory burdens in relation to the SAC product. To remain competitive, we must balance international regulatory compliance with a sensible regulatory approach. Madam President, this bill also includes amendments to allow limited liability companies, or LLCs, to register as SACs. Following an enactment of the Limited Liability Companies Act 2016, it was proposed that the SAC Act be amended to enable use of the products by LLCs. The LLC is a hybrid entity that includes features of both traditional limited companies and partnerships. The fundamental characteristic of limited liability for LLC members, combined with a flexible approach to governance via contractual agreement amongst the LLC members, makes the LLC an attractive business structure. Any LLC member may participate in the day-to-day management and operations of the LLC without losing the liability protection offered by the structure. And there is no requirement for a board of directors. This results in lower overall costs for forming and operating an LLC as compared to a traditional limited company. Madam President, it is believed that the LLC product will pair extremely well with the SAC product. LLCs are known to be a vehicle of choice for private equity funds and other asset holding structures. There are also a number of SACs on the register that are used as fund vehicles. Extension of the SAC Act to apply to LLCs will make both products more viable for use as structures that are positioned to combine flexible governance options with the ability to diversify business activities, assets, and investors. As such, this bill will enhance the versatility and usefulness of the Bermuda LLC and SAC structures. Finally, Madam President, various changes are being made to update and modernize the SAC Act. This includes incorporating provisions that ensure consistency with other acts and that clarify the application of several other laws as they relate to SACs. As well, some existing provisions are being streamlined and recast to allow for a more modern approach to various sections of the Act. Madam President, I would like to thank the technical officers in the Ministry of Finance, the Cabinet Office, the Economic Development Department, the Attorney General's Chambers, the Bermuda Monetary Authority, and all representatives within the private sector who contributed to the production of this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister of Finance. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, thank you to the Junior Minister for bringing this brief to us in regards to this Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021. We, the opposition, we can see the wisdom and practicality of this limited liability company being brought within the scope of the Procedural Act. So, Madam President, we have no objections to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then Senator Hudson, it's over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Segregated Accounts Companies Amendment Act 2021 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President.
We'll now move on to the fourth item on our orders of the day, and that is the Invasive Alien Species Act 2021, and that is in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs. Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Good day, Madam President.
Good day to you.
Madam President, I move that the Senate, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Invasive Alien Species Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I rise to introduce for the second reading the bill entitled the Invasive Alien Species Act 2021, the bill. The purpose of this bill is to greatly enhance the island's biosecurity against the introduction and spread of pest species by creating a regulatory framework to, number one, prohibit and control the importation, propagation, and supply of invasive alien species. Number two, manage invasive alien species through methods which include eradication, reduction, and prevention of the spread of such species, and replacing such species with endemic or native species. Madam President, we must accept the reality that humans are one of the most invasive species on the planet. We can see this just by the dramatic impact we have made to our island over the last 400 years. With this in mind, it is imperative, even just for our own sake, that we begin to better manage our actions to mitigate detrimental impacts to our local environment. This government is embarking on a number of initiatives to best address this. One of these I bring before you today, which will be to manage invasive species, or as they are more commonly referred to, pests. Madam President, an invasive species is one that is deliberately or unwittingly introduced to humans into a new habitat where it becomes an environmental menace. They can be plants, animals, pathogens, and other organisms that are non-native to an ecosystem, which may cause economic, social, or environmental harm, or adversely affect humans or animal health. In particular, they negatively impact local ecosystems and eco-functions through competition, predations, and transmissions of pathogens. Madam President, the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs have provided an exhaustive list of examples of invasive species that have wreaked havoc worldwide and in Bermuda. The information has also been shared in another place, on the Citizens Forum and in the media, so I'm not going to spend an inordinate time revisiting these examples. Madam President, I would like to get to the crux of the matter. I am not overstating the problem when I say the harmful economic, social, and environmental effects of invasive species impact the widest spectrum possible. When an invasive species is introduced to our ecosystem, they destroy our endemic and native species that protect our environment and ultimately our citizens. Once many of our native and endemic species die out, they will never return. Invasives cause great damage to our environment. Our endemic and native species provide resilience and protection from natural disasters. Our coral reefs help to protect our beaches and provide a healthy environment for the creatures that inhabit them. Our mangrove serves as nurseries for our young fish. Native trees and plants stem the constant erosion of our coastal reef. Invasive alien species are destroying these natural protections. The social impact of invasive species are interconnected with economic ones. The loss suffered because of biological invasions can impact quality of life and human health, both directly and indirectly through food reduction, loss of wages, and diseases that certain species can spread. Perhaps the more subtle, but nonetheless very real effect of invasive species are the environmental impacts to the world's natural ecosystem, where native and endemic species are degraded or driven to extinction by species that were never equipped to deal with through direct predations, competitions for scarce resources such as food and shelter, or through changes of our ecosystem. Madam President, native and endemic species are best suited to deal with heat, rising tides, storm events, and so into which provide Bermuda and its inhabited protection from natural disasters. The continued degradation of beneficial habitats like a slow-growing mangrove swamp is uncompeted by fast-growing Brazil, peppers, and casarina trees. It takes money and valuable resources to provide the same services we get for free from Mother Nature. Madam President, before I start to describe the legislation, I would like to speak to the matter that was extensively debated in another place. This involves the notion that we are making criminals of persons who may unknowingly be growing an invasive species in their garden. This is untrue. Prohibited species listed in Schedule 1 are currently not in Bermuda, and we want to keep them out. Restricted species in Schedule 2 and 3 are species already in Bermuda, but we are trying to prevent any more being propagated, bred, or sold without a permit. Permits can be applied for their species in Schedule 2 and 3, but the director has to be satisfied that the applicant understands the conditions that are applied to any permit. Even then, the minister has the authority to call an amnesty for prohibited species. Additionally, there will be transition periods that provide persons in possession of prohibited species a 6-month period to notify the director in order that they might dispose of the invasive species. Madam President, it is recognized that members of the public will likely not have a full understanding of what species are contained on this schedule. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources stand by ready to assist the public with any inquiries, and members of the public should be encouraged to reach out so if they have any questions. This is to this end, the department is also developing a publication which will be available online and in hard copy that will be illustrated Bermuda's invasive species. Madam President, this new legislation proposes to address this by providing a strong regulatory framework to A, prevent the introduction of new invasive alien species, and B, create control to prevent the spread of any such species that have or do become established. To do this, the Invasive Alien Species Act will, number one, provide powers to list problem species as either prohibited or restricted invasive alien species. There will be 2 categories of restricted species. Category A, which is more restrictive in terms of human interaction with the names of species, and Category B, which is less restrictive. This act will allow species to be added, removed, or have their classifications modified. Number 2, set requirements to assess species. All new species not already existing in Bermuda will need to be approved for import, and the application process will include a biorisk assessment to establish the level of risk for the importation of the species. These assessments will be undertaken and submitted on behalf of the applicant by an approved agent to ensure the provisions of accurate information. Applications will be reviewed by the director in consultation with technical officers in respect to the ecosystem, agriculture, horticulture, and fisheries related matters in the Ministry of Health for human health related matters. Number 3, create an effective permit and licensing system which will set conditions for human interactions with restricted species. Number 4, institute measures to control problems. The act will require the minister to approve management plans to control issues arising from invasive species. Of note is the provision for the minister to enter into an agreement with the landowner to assist with the control of an invasive species, and in extraordinary circumstances where no agreement is reached, to apply to the Supreme Court for an order. Number 5, provide sufficient enforcement powers to investigate, to seize, and destroy prohibited species and to seize restricted species as well as requirements for persons to assist during a search. Number 6 says suitable penalties for offenses that will include the importation, breeding, propagation, and selling of prohibited species or restricted species without the required permit or license, as well as providing false and misleading information in the application for a permit or license or biosecurity risk assessment accompanying a application. Upon summary conviction, penalties will range from a maximum of up to $50,000 or 2 years imprisonment for the most egregious offenses, up to $15,000 and 6 months imprisonment for offenses such as obstruction and provisions of false and misleading information. Number 7, establish an appeals process where a person aggrieved by a decision of the director can apply for reviews of decisions to the minister. In circumstances where an appeal is made against the minister's decision provisions for an appeal to the Supreme Court, the decisions of the court being final. Number 8, provisions for amnesty. The act will give the power to the minister to call ad hoc amnesties to encourage persons to relinquish prohibited species in advance of an enforcement action. Number 9, provisions for exemptions. Under very specific circumstances, powers to be provided to the minister to give exemptions for Bermuda Aquarium, Museum, and Zoo to hold their exotic animals collections, as well as a temporary permission for scientific research, public exhibition, and entertainment. Number 10, power to make regulations via the negative resolution process for processes such as insurance permits and license, via risk assessments, approval of agents, and the retention of information by permit and license holders. Number 11, set a transitional period of 6 months to accommodate any already commenced importation. Madam President, the Act for powers to list problem species in 3 schedules. Schedule 1 is a list of prohibited species that are not established in Bermuda but are named, passed in other similar climate jurisdictions. For example, snakes. It is proposed that it will be illegal to import, possess, trade, and sell viable large specimens such as these species. Schedule 2 is a list of restricted A species that are established and proven to be problematic for Bermuda for various reasons, including adverse impact to the island's economy and human health. For example, lionfish and the Brazil pepper. It is proposed that it will not be illegal to possess such species. However, it will be illegal to import, cultivate, breed, or sell without a permit. Schedule 3 is a list of restricted bee species that have some members established in Bermuda that, while currently have a negative impact to our environment, economy, and health circumstances, could change if exposed to overseas populations with immunities such as parasites currently not in our ecosystem, for example, cockroaches. The only restriction to these lists is that it will be illegal to import listed species without a permit. The prepared schedule have been drafted to include species identified by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the consultation with technical officers and from existing policies, including the importation of animal policies 2019, the illustrated guide for Bermuda's endangered and invasive plants 2016, and from outcomes of the UK Overseas Territory Biosecurity Gap Analysis Horizon Scanning Project 2018 that look to identify potential problems in other similar island state environments. Madam President, as I stated previously, the Act does not look to control nature but to better control human actions. Offenses are restricted to actions whereby someone has to make a conscious choice to do something. For instance, in regards to prohibited species, someone would have to make a decision to import such a species. Such an introduction could likely cause significant harm to our eco-human health as well as our natural environment. Further, their control would cost money better spent in other ways. So the proposed punishment is fitting if someone does import something that they should not just because they want to. This strategy is similar to managing restricted age species. The intent of the legislation is not to make criminals of the unknown. That is why the law only makes it offense for actions such as importation, propagation, cultivation, breeding, and selling of problem species we already have. The act assumes that persons who are going to invest their energy, time, and money to doing such would know what it is that they are creating more of. This is similar to restricted bee species, where someone should know what they are important when they are important as species. Madam President, in regards to the current schedule, these are work in progress. The public and our stakeholders can expect more to be added over time through consultation and making of orders and giving of notice through the negative resolution process. It should also be recognized that the Invasive Species Act 2021 is but one of several tools that will be used to manage invasive species. I would like it to note that vermin and feral domestic animals have not been included in the proposed legislation at this juncture. Vermin are already managed under the Public Health Act 1949. Further, domestic animals are better managed under the Care and Protection of Animals Act 1975. While pest birds like feral chickens are already managed under the Protection of Birds Act 1975. Madam President, in conclusion to the Invasive Alien Species Act 2021 presented to this honorable chamber is an effective regime tailored to Bermuda's requirement. It will provide a balanced approach preventing the introduction of the West invasive species and the tools to manage them if and some of them they do establish, while at the same time not making criminals of the unknown. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs. I see that the Permanent Secretary, Rosie Asar, is still with us. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Robin Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Are you able to hear me? Just want to do a sound check.
I can hear you. I haven't heard from anybody else that they're having difficulties, so carry on.
Thank you, Madam President.
Try to speak a little louder. Yep, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. I just, from the outset, I just want to say that certainly from the opposition's point of view, we have no issue with this bill as it is presented. There are a couple of concerns. There is one primary concern that I do have, and certainly the junior minister has also raised it in her presentation. It appears that there's somewhat heavy-handed language within this bill, and that is the heavy-handed language I'm specifically referring to is the penalties and the language as it relates to offenses being made in contravention to the policies that are set out. So I do have a question as it relates specifically to whether there is a specific reason for that, because it does seem to be a bit heavy-handed. So I'd like to know whether there were maybe a significant number of people who have imported, prohibited, or restricted invasive alien species that would sort of lend to why the legislation is quite heavy-handed in that particular area. I would say though that overall, I mean, I think we can all agree that we're very fortunate to live in such a beautiful place as Bermuda, and certainly I think we would all agree how important it is to maintain the ecological balance that we do have, and to keep those alien species that are found in other places, iguanas and tarantulas and and snakes and all those types of things, in addition to plant life and all of that would do damage to our ecology. So I would definitely say that again, we are in support of this bill, but the question about the sort of heavy-handed approach as it relates to penalties and almost leading people to become almost criminals, right? If they contravene in certain things. So I would appreciate if I can have an answer to that question. Otherwise, we are in support. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robin Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Michelle Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the junior minister for her presentation. She addressed one of my concerns in the brief, and that is about making sure that the word gets out to the general public about what these invasive alien species are. One of the things I was going to suggest is that government should make an immediate move to publish the listings of the prohibited and restricted invasive species so that the public can be knowledgeable, so that they will be familiar with what these species are. You know, we're dealing with plants, we're dealing with animals, pathogens, and all kinds of organisms. The list looks very comprehensive, and I think it's important not just for the public to reach out to government, but for government to publicize this information broadly in all kinds of ways so that the public are knowledgeable. It's a very comprehensive bill. I think that, yes, the penalties for disobeying are harsh, but I think they need to be, because we live in a beautiful place, but our ecosystem is very delicate and we need to maintain a balance. Just to add a bit more to the understanding of the listening audience, I'd like to share that when humans first came to settle in Bermuda, this land was dominated by forests of Bermuda cedar. And we had mangrove swamps all along the coast. But when settlement began, the forest began to get cut down, with the wood being used for building and ship making. And the cedar forests were devastated. But the worst part of this was what happened when those scale insects came to Bermuda and caused a blight of the cedar trees. We lost about, it's estimated, 8 million cedar trees. And to this date, only about 10% of the cedars have been replaced by a more hardy version of the cedar tree. So this is the kind of devastation that can be caused by an invasive alien species. And I don't think the environment ever fully recovers when it is impacted so negatively by an invasive alien species. So the bill is very welcome. And I just want to say that all of us should be involved in the protection of our natural ecosystems, because that's all we have. We can't go and build a new one. We have to protect what we have. And sometimes people have unknowingly brought things to Bermuda that they didn't realize would have a negative impact on the ecosystem. But there are also cases where people have knowingly brought things to Bermuda that they knew would do harm. So I hope that This bill and the content of it will be well publicized so that all of Bermuda can be part of the protection of our natural environment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Michelle Simmons. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Ben Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question. With all the changes that are being implemented with this bill, I agree with the past senators when it comes to protecting our environment and even getting people to have an understanding of what is happening in our environment. But my question is, in order to get to the point where there are fines and potential criminal cases that are brought to people that are breaking the rules that could impact our environment, will there have to be an increase in enforcement and staffing in order to actively go out and see if we can make sure that we are protecting our environment? So I'm just wondering whether there will be any increase on that side in order for us to enforce what is being laid out in this bill today. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith, Opposition Leader. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then Senator Lindsay Simmons, it's over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Firstly, I would like to speak to Senator Simmons. I don't know if everybody could see this, but we are actively working on putting out a list with pictures. I've mentioned it in my brief, and to let people know what the restrictions and prohibited species are. So we're actively doing that so that we can get it out to the public as soon as possible. Also, the Bermuda cedar trees are actually protected now. They've been added to our protected list, so they are protected. And Senator Taco, like I said in my brief, the intent of this legislation is not to make criminals of the unknown. But if you are knowingly bringing in, cultivating, breeding, selling any prohibited or restricted species, you are a criminal.
Order, Madam President.
What is your point of order?
Just
Senator
clarification. It doesn't say knowingly. That's the reason why we keep bringing it up. If it said knowingly, then we would feel comfortable that that's the case. We just don't want people to fall in that line and end up being on the criminal side of this when they potentially didn't do it knowingly. So that specific word that the junior minister said is the reason that we keep bringing this up. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith.
So, for example, I'll give an example. I had problems before where somebody knowingly brought snakes in their socks to Bermuda. They knew that they couldn't bring snakes to Bermuda and still brought snakes to Bermuda. So if you knowingly bring something into Bermuda without a permit, it's against the law. So you are a criminal. Unfortunately, this speaks to the lack of understanding of the seriousness and cost of managing invasive species. In the case of prohibited species, one cannot walk back. The introduction of a species, for example, like I said, the snake, once it becomes established, it takes a significant amount of money and resources to try to eradicate. Usually, this is not possible. Consultations suggestions include a lifetime ban, fines, or civil penalties. These were not considered to be appropriate to the gravity of the offense. It is noted that the magistrate has the ability to determine the level of fine and imprisonment based on the offense.
Point of order, Madam President.
Senator Robin Tucker, what is your point of order?
I would actually just like to get some clarification because the junior minister mentioned, and I'm thankful she mentioned as an example a snake. However, the legislation not just speaks to animals or those types of things, it also speaks to documents and information. So again, if someone if knowingly is not, if someone presents a document and it is, and they don't know that the information is misleading, then they could end up committing an offense. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
So, only people with permits have to keep, documents, for review and condition of their license. And that goes for any type of license, Madam President. And Madam President, then the question was asked about what are the cost implications for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources to implement the new system? It's minimal. The department already has resources to implement the legislation, including the Plant Protection Laboratory, veterinary services, animal wardens, fishery wardens, and biodiversity section. So we already have these departments established. So it's going to be at a minimal cost. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. You now do your second reading.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Invasive Alien Species Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect to this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Invasive Alien Species Act 2021 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Invasive Alien Species Act 2021 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons, Junior Minister for Home Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President.
We now have the fifth item, but I would like to ask the Minister Peets whether or not he is prepared to proceed with the second reading of the Motorcar Liveries Amendment Act 2021, or did he want to have it dealt with later?
Thank you, Madam President. We are prepared to proceed with the bill in which you just mentioned.
Thank you very much. Then the second reading of the Motorcar Liveries Amendment Act 2021 is in the name of Senator Curtis Richardson, Junior Minister for Transport. Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Motorcar Deliveries Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Yes, and may I just remind senators also that there is an amendment that is suggested for this bill, and we may have to go into committee, but we will we'll see what transpires. Carry on, Senator Richardson.
Madam President?
Yes, Senator Jones.
We don't have the Cabinet Office's camera on. Can we have that turned on for when the Junior Minister?
Thank you.
Here we are.
Thank you. I do apologize. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Carry on, Senator Richardson.
Madam President, the bill I present today is the Motorcar Liveries Amendment Act 2021. Members of this Honorable House may recall that in 2016, by way of the Motorcar Amendment Act Number 2 Act 2016, the Principal Act was amended to create a category of vehicles called rental mini cars to provide a safer option for visitors who wish to make their own way around the island. However, Missing from the Principal Act were offenses and penalties for breaching the conditions stipulated in legislation. The bill presented today presents and begins by addressing this void. Madam President, members of the House of the Senate may also recall the Motorcar Amendment Act Number 2, Tour Quadricycles Act 2018, that introduced another category of vehicles described as tour quadricycles. These units were defined as a four-wheel vehicle with a bicycle-type seat for the driver or rider, steered by handlebars and propelled by either mechanical or electrical power. Madam President, the 2018 amendment went on to further describe how tour quadricycle liveries must be operated, the application process to acquire a permit to operate a livery, the rules for guided tours, stipulations regarding the wearing of protective headgear during tours, and ended with the minister's authority to regulate the design and build of the machines. Madam President, as written in 2018, sections 101E through K of the Principal Act focused on one specific vehicle design being imported into the island. However, Madam President, as time progressed, more entrepreneurs interested in the tourist transportation industry discovered different vehicle designs that could also satisfy this market. One such design is the motorized version of a pulled or pedal cycle rickshaw seen in many countries around the world, particularly in Asia. Madam President, this machine is commonly referred to as a tuk-tuk. The name derived from the engine sound that the earliest models made. With the advent of better technologies, this annoying sound has been eliminated. Madam President, Section 24, Subsection 5 of the Principal Act defines a motorcycle as a motor car designed to travel on two or three wheels, which is equipped with two or more gear ratios, or the motor of which has a cubic capacity exceeding 50 cubic centimeters, but subject to subsection 1, not exceeding 150 cubic centimeters. It was originally thought that a 150cc tuk-tuk could be placed in the motorcycle category, Madam President. However, one tuk-tuk feature prevented this being accomplished, a reverse gear. Madam President, Regulation 12 of the Motorcar Construction Equipment and Use Regulations 1952 states, every motor car except a motorcycle shall be capable of being so worked that it may travel either forwards or backwards. Motorized tuk-tuks have a reverse gear to assist the rider because of their weight and size. Therefore, there was actually no category in which to place the new machine in current legislation. Madam President, rather than again create bespoke legislation to accommodate a specific vehicle design, the decision was taken to charge all references to tour quadricycles in Part VIB of the Principal Act and instead use the phrase guided tour vehicle. Also, the definition of a guided tour vehicle in this bill is expanded to include both three- and four-wheeled vehicles. Therefore, Part VIB of the Principal Act will now allow for the operation of tuk-tuks alongside vehicles such as ATVs and quadricycles in the future. Madam President, an additional benefit of this approach is the elimination of restrictions created by the 2018 amendments to Parts VIB. The Motorcar Liveries Amendment Act 2021 allows for the introduction of various designs of guided tour vehicles. Madam President, to be clear, this bill proposes that all legislation that previously pertained to tour quadricycles be now attached to the new vehicle category known as guided tour vehicles. Included in the permit fee, the duration of the permit, the minister's authority to issue and revoke permits, the registering and licensing of the vehicles, and prescribing the specific specifications for registration plates, their dimensions and placements on the vehicles, etc. Madam President, included with these amendments are necessary changes to the Government Fees Regulations 1976 to continue to capture the required license and permit fees and the Public Holidays Act 1947 to continue the exemption from the said act to be able to operate guided tour vehicles on Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and Christmas Day. There is also an amendment to the Motorcycles and Auxiliary Bicycles Special Measures of Control Act 1953 to continue the prohibition of the import and sale of engine upgrade kits for vehicles used on a guided tour. Madam President, there will also be regulations and terms of conditions of a license to operate a guided tour vehicle livery regarding the use of tuk-tuks, which include, but are not limited to: 1, the vehicles cannot be operated by customers. 2, the vehicles are to be hired with a certified tour guide who must possess a valid motorcycle license and will pilot the vehicle to points of interest throughout the island. 3, the maximum number of passengers will be limited to 2, and 4, the wearing of protective headgear will be mandatory for all persons riding in or on a tuk-tuk. Madam President, these amendments fall in line with all other initiatives designed to provide business opportunities in the tourism sector for local residents. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Motorcar Deliveries Amendment Act 2021 be now read a second time.
Madam President, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Senator Richardson, Senator John White wants to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Madam President. The National Park System, as established in 1986, was designed to give the people of Bermuda network of land throughout the island specifically set aside where residents and visitors could relax, exercise, walk, and pedal bike. The objectives of having protected areas, as stated in the 1986 National Parks Act, includes providing the use of the area in its natural state with a minimum of commercial and mechanized activity. Since the park system was established in 1986, our highways, land development, and buildings in Bermuda all have increased exponentially to the point where open space for the general public to enjoy is rapidly decreasing. The 1986 Act, as amended, contains very thoughtful rules if properly applied and not overruled by the exercise of absolute arbitrary power of ministerial discretion. Madam President, literally thousands of Bermudians enjoy Bermuda's national parks and railway trails. Bermudians of all ages, from toddlers learning how to walk to the elderly, enjoy the peace and quiet and serenity of these protected areas. On September 24th, 2021, the Minister of Transportation introduced a bill in the House entitled the Motorcar Deliveries Amendment Act 2021, which I am concerned may lead to 3- and/or 4-wheeled vehicles making guided tours within the Bermuda National Park system without limitation, and leave the decision to do so primarily up to 1 or 2 ministers. Many of our citizens will remember that this matter came up a few years ago concerning a proposal by a businessman to operate a business within the Railway Trail Park, Fort Scour, and Hog Bay Park, utilizing all-terrain vehicles, also known as ATVs. This issue ultimately went to the Supreme Court and was quashed by a judgment rendered by the Chief Justice, noting that the minister at the time had issued a license to this businessman, but had failed to obtain planning permission. Madam President, it is important to note that Section 9 of the Bermuda National Parks Regulations 1988 prohibits use of vehicles in our national parks, but Section 12 permits the minister authority to grant a license to override the prohibition of using such vehicles in parks. Madam President, we need to ensure through legislation that the decision of one minister won't adversely affect the enjoyment of thousands of Bermudians who find solace and pleasure in these restricted areas. Further, Madam President, as demonstrated in the Chief Justice's judgment that I previously referred to, it came to the surprise of many, I think, that the minister can legally, and in fact did, completely ignore the results of a required regulatory public consultation, which the minister must conduct if there is an overriding public interest under the National Parks Act because of a change of use, which in this case was allowing mechanized guided tours in our parks. Madam President, referring to this attempt a few years ago to issue a license for three-wheelers, of the 636 submissions made in the public consultation, which were presented in confidential ballot box, 634 of the 636 submissions objected to having guided tours in certain parks, mostly situated in Somerset or Sandwich Parish. Madam President, 634 objected and 2 were in support. The votes against the use of these guided tour vehicles by the public had zero impact, despite extensive provisions in the National Parks Act that attempt to make the parks in Bermuda a refuge from modern urban activities, including but not limited to safe haven from our overcrowded, dangerous, traffic-filled roadways. Madam President, I am passionate about doing whatever I can, and I hope I have the support of other senators in ensuring the continued enjoyment for years to come, unaffected by the safety concerns, noise pollution, and reduced enjoyment of our national parks and railway trails. For the reasons I have just cited, Madam President, I am not in support of this bill as drafted. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator John White. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me first preface what I'm about to say by, first of all, extending a hearty thank you to the Junior Minister, not only for bringing this brief forward at this time, but also for facilitating me with answers to questions prior to this session. It really shows a spirit of collaboration and a willingness to reach across the political aisle, which I can appreciate. And Madam President, I believe and hope that this will be a signal that we as a team on either side of the aisle are going to do all we can to make sure that we work together. Now, Madam President, we understand that the purpose of this amendment that's before us was to create an offense for operating a mini car livery without a license. Now, that part of this amendment, we as an opposition are in favor and support. We would hate to think that there are people or companies that are conducting these businesses that may not be in compliance with the rules and regulations, let alone know what those rules and regulations are, and be able to operate their business under these circumstances. So we really believe that those enforcements were important and critical. And so we completely and wholeheartedly embrace those amendments. Now, also, part of the purpose of this amendment was to expand the type of vehicle that was able to be utilized by these tour operators. Them being able to go from a four-wheel to three-wheel vehicles. So we understand the reason for doing that as well. But our concern is that if you go back to the primary legislation, which goes back to the Motorcar Act of 1951, there is vagueness, there is a lack of clarity of where these actual vehicles can be operated and utilized. It's almost like saying I go to TCD with my car to get it registered and licensed, and it's approved, but then I can't drive on the highway. So what's the point of having a registered and licensed vehicle, but I can't drive on the highway? that's in sync with what I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that why have a license to drive these guided tour vehicles, and you can't drive it in the places that you want it to. So when I saw this amendment, I saw it as a great opportunity for us to remove loopholes to ensure that the vagueness and the unclarity of the language of this amendment is cleared up. Now, one thing that this amendment does, which I think is also very good, it gives a clear definition of what a guided tour vehicle is. I think that was important. The primary legislation also talks about the types of vehicles. It talks about headgear that's needed to be used. It talks about enforcing these regulations. Now, Senator White quite adequately gave details on this Supreme Court case in regards to this tour operator that was given permission by the minister, and then it being squashed by the Chief Justice at the time. So we want to avoid situations like this where the interpretation of legislation is ambiguous, almost at odds with itself, to avoid the need for any group, environmental group or whatever, to have to take a case to court when we can solve that issue, solve the spending of money, hiring of lawyers, taking up court time to clear up something that we can, in this chamber, stand up and make sense. And that means we have to go back in time. That means we have to look back at the primary legislation, get an understanding of what the purpose was, and then in fixing amendments or amendments being added to fix the primary legislation, we need to make sure that it is in sync. So, Madam President, what I'm going to request is that we be able to go into committee, and I have a proposal for an amendment that I would like to put forward amongst my colleagues, that it will create a situation which will avoid any doubt in the operational usage of these guided tour vehicles. What I must say, Madam President, but that there needs to be a broader discussion and debate on the usage of tour vehicle, guided tour vehicles in general. Bermuda is very small. In fact, there is a limited amount of free land, open land, where you can operate these vehicles. We know in some of our competitors in the South that have islands where the population lives in 20% of the land, the rest of the 80% is wilderness, is wide and open space. So it makes sense that you would have an excursion that allow for guided tour vehicles to be able to take advantage of the natural landscape, of the wildlife, of tourists being able to come and enjoy a tour such as this. But because of the situation of the smallness of this country, we have to be ever vigilant. We have to be good stewards of the land that we have to ensure that we are not infringing on people, the public's sense of peace and tranquility. We know that these vehicles are very loud. We know that they have the potential of causing permanent damage to the foliage, to the landscape. One thing that I took note of, Madam President, is even when the minister, the substantive minister back in 2018, gave the permission for this tour operator, mind you, on condition of it being valid for only 1 year, I noticed that there was no environmental impact assessment done. That type of study, as we know, Madam President, gives us and gives the expertise within the ministry an idea of how much potential damage these guided tour vehicles can actually negatively impact the environment. Then we took note of the fact that in the consultation process, the majority of the persons were against it, and their concerns were ignored. So we want to be able to avoid a similar situation coming back to haunt us, where legislation that is vague, that's unclear, becomes an opportunity for a minister to be able to impose his will and to impose his opinions upon a situation that could put the country at risk or put our protected areas at risk. So, Madam President, in an attempt to remove any avoidance of doubt, to remove any gray areas, when we go into committee, I would like to propose an amendment that we can utilize in this amendment to ensure that there's no loopholes, that our protected areas, that our restricted areas can be protected. Thank you, Madam President.
Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Michelle Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will start by thanking the junior minister for bringing this bill. And I'm in accord with Senator Jones in saying that I'm quite happy that this bill addresses an omission from an earlier bill so that there is an appropriate fine for anyone who decides that they should go ahead and operate a livery without having a license. So I fully support that. With regard to the rest of the bill, which deals mostly with guided tour vehicles, I have two major concerns. My first concern is, and I see this differently from Senator Jones. My first concern is, I don't think the definition of guided tour vehicle is sufficiently clear and detailed. I'll read the definition, if that's all right with you, Madam President. It says, guided tour vehicle means a 3- or 4-wheeled vehicle with a bicycle seat for the driver or rider and steered by handlebars, which is propelled by mechanical or electrical power and is used for providing tours. That's the definition that's in this bill. So this means then that 3- or 4-wheeled vehicles, that is, any 3- or 4-wheeled vehicles, which fit the rest of the definition, can be used as guided tour vehicles. I did a little research and I found that there are many 3-wheeled guided tour vehicles which are being introduced to us for the first time. There's no mention of tuk-tuks in this definition because that would narrow it considerably. But I looked at it as it is defined, and it includes some 3-wheeled vehicles, which are deemed to be rather dangerous. In fact, there are serious safety concerns of some of those 3-wheeled guided tour vehicles. I believe in the United States, a ban was imposed on the importation of new 3-wheeled guided tour vehicles. And that ban was imposed until specific product safety standards were developed. And I'm not sure that those standards have yet been developed. In the meantime, the 4-wheeled vehicles have become very popular. And so I think people have put the 3-wheeled vehicles on the back shelf. But I'm looking at this as a real safety consideration because the way it's defined in the bill before us today, it's not specific to any one particular type of 3-wheeled vehicle. So I assume that it means that any 3-wheeled guided tour vehicle can be part of this group. That's my first major concern, safety. Then my second major concern is about the impact on the environment. We were talking earlier about Bermuda's fragile ecosystem, and that is not an overstatement. And when you consider that the likelihood of these vehicles going into our national parks is very real, I think that we need to be careful because, as Senator White said earlier, we are expecting that we will be able to enjoy the national park system without additional noise, without vehicles whizzing past, with tourists who are on these vehicles. So I also wanted to question as to whether these vehicles could be specifically battery powered versus gas powered, because in the definition it says that they can be propelled by mechanical or electrical power. Electrical power would certainly reduce the noise pollution and also the air pollution. So there's unreadiness on my part with regard to the definition in particular. And I really think that a bit more work needs to be done before this can be passed. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Michelle Simmons. Senators, I'm not sure if there's any other senator who wants to speak, but as it is near, I see that Ben Smith wants to speak, but I am suggesting, senators, that we go to lunch and we continue with the senators who want to speak after that, because we will be going into committee, I'm sure, on this bill, or we probably will. So I'm suggesting that we break for lunch at this stage, and we'll continue with those senators who want to speak on this bill when we return. So Senate stands adjourned until 2 o'clock. Thank you. Or actually,